My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm 30 years old, standing in the driveway of my childhood home in Millbrook, Ohio, watching snowflakes dance in the yellow glow of the porch light. The Honda Civic behind me coughs and sputters one last time before finally going quiet, steam rising from its dented hood like a dying breath. This beat-up car has carried me through 3 states and countless nights of coding in parking lots, but tonight it feels like a costume, a deliberate choice to keep my family's expectations exactly where they've always been. The house looks smaller than I remember, its white siding weathered by decades of Ohio winters, the front steps sagging slightly under the weight of time and neglect. But the Christmas lights still twinkle along the roofline, the same multicolored bulbs Dad has been hanging for 25 years, and Mom's ceramic reindeer still guards the front yard like a faithful sentinel. Some things never change in small-town Ohio, and maybe that's exactly what I've been counting on. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I adjust my plain gray sweater, the kind you'd find at any discount store, and run my fingers through hair that hasn't seen a proper barber in months. The person staring back at me in the car's side mirror looks exactly like what my family expects, a 30-year-old drifter who never quite figured it out, who dropped out of engineering school to chase some foolish dream about computers and coding. They have no idea that 3 months ago I sold my startup for $4.8 million. Or that the notification on my phone yesterday confirmed the wire transfer that saved this very house from foreclosure. The irony isn't lost on me. Here I am, dressed like I'm barely scraping by, about to walk into a house that I now own, to face a family that still sees me as their greatest disappointment. The property tax liens, the mounting debt, the foreclosure notice. I'd discovered it all through a simple Google search of public records. My parents had hidden their financial struggles behind pride and stubbornness, the same traits that had driven me away a decade ago. I take a deep breath, the cold air burning my lungs, and start walking toward the front door. Through the frosted windows, I can see the warm glow of the dining room, shadows moving back and forth as my family prepares for Christmas Eve dinner. I hear laughter, Brian's booming voice, probably telling another story about his latest sales achievement, and Mom's nervous giggle that always surfaces when she's trying to keep everyone happy. My hand hovers over the doorbell for a moment, and I wonder if I should have stayed away. But then I remember the foreclosure notice, dated for December 27th, and I know why I'm really here. This isn't about reconciliation or forgiveness. This is about preserving something that matters more than their opinion of me. The place where we were once a family, before success became the only currency that mattered. I ring the doorbell and wait. The door swings open before I can change my mind, and there stands my mother, Diane Miller, in her favorite red cardigan with tiny snowflakes embroidered around the collar. Her hair is more silver than brown now, pulled back in the same practical bun she's worn for as long as I can remember. And her eyes, those worried blue eyes that used to watch me take apart toasters and radios, immediately scan me from head to toe with the practiced concern of a woman who spent 30 years as a nurse. "Ethan," she breathes, and I can hear the relief mixed with disappointment in her voice. Relief that I'm alive, disappointment that I look exactly like what she was afraid I'd become. "You made it." "Hi, Mom." I step forward and wrap my arms around her small frame, feeling how thin she's gotten, how her shoulders seem to carry more weight than they should. She smells like cinnamon and vanilla, the same holiday candles she's been burning every Christmas since I was 8. "Sorry I'm late. The car gave me some trouble in Columbus." She pulls back to look at me again, her nurse's instincts kicking in as she studies my face for signs of exhaustion, malnutrition, or whatever other disasters she's been imagining for the past year. "You look tired, honey. Are you eating enough? When was the last time you had a proper meal?" I could tell her about the 5-star restaurant I ate at last week in San Francisco, or the private chef I hired for my penthouse apartment in Chicago, but instead I just smile and say, "I'm fine, Mom." "Really?" "Ethan." My brother Brian's voice booms from the living room, and suddenly he's standing behind Mom, all 6 feet 2 inches of him filling the doorway. He's wearing a polo shirt. That probably cost more than most people's rent. His hair perfectly styled, His smile, the kind that sells medical equipment to hospital administrators? Well, 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 the prodigal son returns. He extends his hand for a shake, and I notice his Rolex catching the light. How's the freelance life treating you? There it is, the subtle dig wrapped in a friendly question, the way Brian has always operated. He's not cruel, just superior. Always reminding everyone that he chose the safe path, the responsible path, the path that leads to suburban houses and retirement plans, and the kind of success that makes parents proud at church socials. Can't complain, I say, accepting his handshake. His grip is firm, practiced, the kind of handshake that closes deals and impresses clients. Mine is calloused from years of typing, from long nights spent building something they'll never understand. Still driving that old Honda? Brian glances over my shoulder at the car, and I can see him calculating my net worth based on the dented bumper and the duct tape holding the passenger mirror in place. You know, I could probably get you a good deal on something more reliable. Friend of mine runs a dealership. The Honda gets me where I need to go. If you say so, brother, if you say so. Mom clears her throat, the way she always does when she senses tension building. Come in, come in. It's freezing out there. Dad's in the kitchen, and Kayla's helping with the potatoes. I follow Mom through the narrow hallway, past the family photos that chronicle our lives and frozen moments. Brian's graduation from Ohio State, his wedding, the birth of his kids. There's one of me from high school, awkward and thin, holding a computer programming certificate I'd earned at summer camp. It's the only photo of my achievements that made it to the wall, and even that feels like charity. The kitchen hasn't changed much. The same yellow linoleum floors, the same oak cabinets Dad built himself back in the 80s, the same small window above the sink that looks out onto the backyard where I used to dig holes looking for buried treasure. But there's something different now, a weariness in the way the light catches the scratched countertops, the way the refrigerator hums just a little too loudly, like it's working harder than it should. Dad stands at the stove stirring what smells like Mom's famous beef stew, his broad shoulders slightly stooped with age. Jack Miller was once the strongest man I knew, the kind of factory worker who could fix anything with his hands and solve any problem with enough elbow grease. Now, at 68, his hair is completely white, and his hands shake just slightly as he holds the wooden spoon. There he is, he says without turning around. The computer guy. It's not exactly a warm greeting, but it's not hostile either. It's just tired, like he's resigned himself to having a son who never quite lived up to expectations. Hey, Dad. He turns around, and I see the same blue eyes I inherited, though his are clouded with something I can't quite identify. Disappointment? Worry? Maybe just the weight of carrying secrets, like the foreclosure notice that was probably hidden in the kitchen drawer, right where Mom keeps the important papers. You look like you've been sleeping in your car again, he says, and there's no judgment in his voice, just a kind of sad acceptance. Your mother's been worried sick. I'm doing fine, Dad, really. Are you? He sets down the spoon and crosses his arms. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're still drifting. 30 years old, Ethan. Your brother's got a house, a career, kids on the way. What do you have to show for all this? Computer stuff? I could tell him about the app I built that helps kids learn math, the one used by over 2 million students across the country. I could mention the educational platform that caught the attention of investors, or the algorithm that revolutionized how small businesses manage their inventory. I could explain how I spent 5 years living in cheap motels, coding 18 hours a day, surviving on gas station coffee and determination, building something that mattered. Instead, I just shrug. I'm figuring it out. Figuring it out, he shakes his head. You know what I was doing when I was 30? I was working double shifts at the plant, saving every penny so you boys could have better lives than I did. That's what a man does, Ethan. He provides. He builds something solid. The irony burns in my throat. I want to tell him that I did build something solid. Solid enough to save his house. Solid enough to give him the security he worked his whole life for. but the words stay trapped behind years of disappointment and misunderstanding. "Jack, leave the boy alone." The voice comes from the doorway, and I turn to see Kayla, Brian's wife, carrying a bowl of mashed potatoes. She's wearing a simple green dress that brings out her eyes, her brown hair pulled back in a messy bun that somehow looks effortless and elegant at the same time. Kayla has always been the peacekeeper in this family, the one who notices when someone's drowning and actually throws them a life preserver. "I'm just saying," Dad starts, but Kayla cuts him off with a look that could stop traffic. "You're just saying what you always say." She sets the bowl down on the counter with more force than necessary. "Maybe instead of telling Ethan what he should be doing, you could ask him what he is doing. People build careers differently now, Jack. Not everyone needs to punch a time clock to be successful." I feel a rush of gratitude toward my sister-in-law, this woman who married into our family and somehow became the voice of reason we never knew we needed. She's a fifth-grade teacher, the kind who stays late to help struggling students and spends her own money on classroom supplies. She understands what it means to build something meaningful, even if it doesn't come with a corner office and a company car. "Thank you, Kayla," I say quietly. She gives me a small smile, the kind that says she sees through the worn jeans and the beat-up car to something underneath. "How's the app development going? Last time we talked, you were working on something for schools." My chest tightens. She remembers. In all the family gatherings I've missed, all the phone calls I've avoided, Kayla somehow held on to the few details I'd shared about my work. It's a small thing, but it feels enormous in this kitchen where my own father sees me as a failure. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "It's going well," I manage. "Really well, actually." "That's wonderful." She turns to Dad, her teacher voice in full effect. "Did you know that Ethan's been building educational software? The kind that helps kids learn math and science. That's not drifting, Jack. That's making a difference." Dad looks uncomfortable, like he's been caught saying something he shouldn't have. "I didn't know it was. I thought it was just..." He trails off, and I can see him struggling with the realization that maybe he doesn't know his son as well as he thought. "Just what, Dad?" "I don't know, Ethan." "You never talk about it. You show up looking like you've been living rough, driving that old car, and you expect us to understand? We worry about you. Your mother cries about you. We don't know if you're eating, if you have a place to sleep, if you're okay." The words hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I thought their disappointment was about my choices, about my failure to follow their plan. But maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe they were just scared for me, and fear had dressed itself up as judgment. "I'm okay," I say, but the words feel inadequate, like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. "Are you really?" Mom appears beside Dad, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Because we love you, honey. We just want to know you're safe." The dining room table is set with Mom's good china, the same blue and white pattern she's been saving for special occasions since I was a kid. The tablecloth is pressed and pristine, and there's a centerpiece of pine boughs and red candles that fills the room with the scent of Christmas. It's the kind of scene that belongs on a greeting card, all warmth and tradition and family togetherness. But as I take my seat, the same chair I occupied for 18 years, second from the left, I can't shake the feeling that I'm an actor playing a role I've forgotten how to perform. Brian sits across from me, his phone buzzing with what I assume are work emails, while Kayla tries to coax him into putting it away. Dad carves the roast beef with the same methodical precision he brings to everything, and Mom flutters between the kitchen and the dining room, making sure everyone has enough of everything. "So Ethan," Brian says, finally pocketing his phone, "catch me up. Last I heard you were in, where was it, Nevada?" "Arizona," I correct. "But that was 2 years ago." Right, the whole digital nomad thing. He says it like it's a phase, something I'll grow out of when I get serious about life. "Where are you based now?" I take a sip of water, buying time. The truth is complicated. Technically, I own apartments in 3 cities, but I spend most of my time in Chicago, in a penthouse that overlooks Lake Michigan. I have a home office with 4 monitors, a standing desk, and a view that would make most people weep. But that's not the story they want to hear, and it's not the story I came here to tell. I move around, I say finally. Go where the work is. That must be exhausting, Mom says, passing the green beans. Never having a real home. Quote, the irony is suffocating. I'm sitting in what is now legally my real home, the house I bought to save from foreclosure, the place where I learned to ride a bike and caught fireflies and dreamed of building something that mattered. But to them, I'm the son who never settled down, never found his place in the world. It has its advantages, I say carefully. Like what? Dad asks, and there's genuine curiosity in his voice, as if he's trying to understand this life I've chosen. Freedom, I guess. The ability to work on projects that interest me, to help people solve problems. I pause, thinking about the thousands of teachers using my educational platforms, the small businesses that have grown because of the tools I built. To make a difference. That's admirable, Kayla says, and I catch her shooting Brian a look that clearly says, be nice to your brother. Sure, but at what cost? Brian cuts into his roast beef, the knife scraping against the plate. I mean, no offense, but you're 30 years old, Ethan. Don't you want stability? A house? A family? Something permanent? I look around the table, at the faces of the people who raised me, who love me in their own complicated way, who have no idea that their definition of permanent is currently hanging by a thread. The doorbell rings just as Dad starts to say grace, and Mom's face lights up with the kind of surprise that comes from unexpected Christmas visitors. That must be Mr. Rourke, she says, already pushing back from the table. I invited him. Poor man's been alone since Margaret passed. Tom Rourke has been our neighbor for as long as I can remember, a retired mailman with a gravelly voice and opinions about everything. He delivered our mail for 37 years, watched Brian and me grow up, and somehow earned the right to speak his mind at family gatherings without consequence. He's the kind of neighbor who still exists in small Ohio towns, the one who borrows sugar and returns lawnmowers and knows everyone's business whether they want him to or not. Sorry I'm late, Diane, he says as Mom ushers him in, bringing with him the smell of winter air and the aftershave he's been wearing since the Carter administration. Had to help Mrs. Patterson with her Christmas lights, woman's determined to blind the whole neighborhood. He shrugs out of his heavy coat, revealing a red sweater that's seen better decades. Tom, you remember Ethan, Mom says, her voice carrying that forced cheer she uses when she's trying to manage social situations. Of course I remember Ethan. Mr. Rourke settles into the extra chair Mom hurriedly sets up, his sharp eyes taking in my appearance with the practiced assessment of someone who spent decades cataloging details. How's the big city treating you, son? I'm doing fine, Mr. Rourke. That old Honda out front yours? He doesn't wait for an answer. Looks like it's been through a war. Still running, though, so I guess that's something. Always said you were a smart kid, finding ways to make things work. Brian snorts. Smart enough to keep driving a car that should have been scrapped 5 years ago. Nothing wrong with an old car if it gets you where you need to go, Mr. Rourke says, reaching for the mashed potatoes. Some of the richest people I know drive beaters. Warren Buffett drove the same car for decades. Smart money doesn't waste money on showing off. There's an uncomfortable silence around the table. I can see Dad processing this comment, maybe wondering if he's been too quick to judge success by its packaging. Brian looks annoyed, as if Mr. Rourke has somehow undermined his point about stability and conventional markers of achievement. That's different, though, Brian says carefully. Warren Buffett could afford any car he wanted. He chose to drive an old one. And how do you know Ethan couldn't afford a new car? Mr. Rourke asks, his tone deceptively casual. You ever ask him? The question hangs in the air like a challenge. All eyes turn to me, and I feel the weight of their expectations, their assumptions, their need to understand where I fit in their carefully ordered world. This is the moment where I could tell them about the bank account, about the startup sale, about the fact that I could buy any car on the lot without blinking. Instead, I just smile and say, the Honda's been good to me. The conversation moves on to safer topics: the weather, the Buckeyes' disappointing season, Mrs. Henderson's new hip replacement, but I can feel the undercurrent of tension that Mr. Rourke's comment created. Dad keeps glancing at me like he's seeing me differently, and Brian seems determined to prove his original point about my lack of direction. "You know what I don't understand," Brian says, cutting into his second helping of roast beef, "is how you can be satisfied with just getting by. Don't you want more than that?" Quote, "Brian," Kayla warns, her voice carrying the tone she probably uses with her more difficult students. "No, it's a fair question," he continues, warming to his theme. "I mean, look at this place." He gestures around the dining room, at the faded wallpaper and the 20-year-old furniture. Mom and Dad worked their whole lives to build something stable, something they could pass down. Don't you feel any responsibility to carry that forward? The irony is so thick I could choke on it. Here's my brother, lecturing me about responsibility, while sitting in a house that would have been seized by the county in 3 days if I hadn't intervened. He has no idea that every fork he's holding, every bite he's taking, every breath of warm air in this room exists because of money I transferred from an account he doesn't know I have. I think everyone defines success differently," I say carefully. "That's just something unsuccessful people say to make themselves feel better," Brian shoots back, and I see Mom wince. "Look, I'm not trying to be harsh, but you're 30 years old and you live like a college student. When are you going to grow up and get a real job?" "Brian!" Mom's voice is sharp now, but the damage is done. Dad sets down his fork and looks at me with those tired blue eyes. "Your brother's not wrong, Ethan. I've been patient. We all have. But this drifting around has to stop. You should have just gotten a real job like your brother." There it is. The words I've been dreading and expecting for 10 years, delivered with the weight of final judgment. In Dad's voice, I hear every disappointment, every missed expectation, every phone call Mom made where she had to admit she didn't know where I was or what I was doing. The dining room falls silent except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner and the soft hiss of snow against the windows. Mr. Rourke chews thoughtfully, his weathered hands steady on his silverware. Kayla looks mortified. Mom's eyes are bright with tears she's trying not to shed. And I sit there, holding the deed to this house in my metaphorical back pocket, wondering how long I can keep pretending to be the family failure when I'm actually the only thing standing between them and financial ruin. I look around the table at the faces of my family, Brian's satisfied expression, like he's finally said what needed saying, Dad's resigned disappointment, Mom's barely contained tears, Kayla's horror at how cruel this has become. Even Mr. Rourke has stopped eating, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth as he watches this family drama unfold. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable, and I realize I've reached the crossroads I've been avoiding for 10 years. I can keep playing the role they've written for me, the disappointing son, the drifter, the one who never lived up to his potential. Or I can tell them the truth and watch their entire perception of me, of themselves, of this moment, crumble like a house of cards. "You're right," I say finally, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "I should have gotten a real job." Brian nods, vindicated. "I'm glad you can finally admit that." "I should have gotten a real job," I continue, "instead of spending 5 years living in motels, coding 18 hours a day, building apps that nobody understood. I should have listened when you told me I was wasting my time." "Ethan," Mom starts, but I hold up a hand. "I should have given up when the first investor said my ideas were worthless, or when the second one said educational technology was a dead end, or when I was down to my last $100 and living on gas station coffee." I take a breath, feeling the weight of everything I've carried alone for so long. I should have come home and gotten a job at the plant, or learned to sell medical equipment, or done anything that would have made you proud. Dad's expression softens slightly, as if he's hearing something in my voice he didn't expect. "But I didn't," I continue. "I kept coding, kept building, kept believing that maybe, just maybe, I could create something that mattered. And 3 months ago, I sold my startup, an educational platform used by over 2 million students, for $4.8 million. The silence that follows is different from before. It's not uncomfortable, it's stunned. Brian's fork clatters against his plate. Mom's hand flies to her mouth. Dad just stares at me like I've started speaking a foreign language. That's not possible, Brian says finally. You drive that piece of junk Honda. You dress like someone who doesn't care about impressing people, I finish. Yeah, I do. Because I learned something living in those motels, Brian. I learned that success isn't about what you drive or where you live. It's about what you build, what you contribute, what you sacrifice for the people you love. Mr. Rourke slowly sets down his fork, a smile spreading across his weathered face. I knew it, he says quietly. 40 years of delivering mail teaches you to read people. I knew there was more to this story. 4.8 million? Mom whispers, like she's afraid to say the number too loudly, as if it might disappear if she acknowledges it fully. Yes, I say simply. And before you ask, yes, it's real money, in a real bank account, with real taxes that I pay every quarter to the IRS. Brian runs his hands through his perfectly styled hair, for once at a loss for words. But why? Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? It's a fair question, and one I've asked myself 1,000 times during sleepless nights in Chicago penthouses and Arizona desert motels alike. Because I needed to know who I was without your approval. I needed to build something that was mine, not something designed to make you proud. But we are proud, Dad says, his voice rough with emotion. Jesus, Ethan, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I look around the table, at the faces of people who are seeing me clearly for the first time in a decade. But there's something else you should know. Mr. Rourke chuckles and reaches for his water glass. This keeps getting better. 3 days ago, I received a notification about this house, about the property tax liens, about the foreclosure notice scheduled for December 27th. I watch as the color drains from Dad's face, as Mom's hand flies to her throat. I know you've been struggling. I know you took out that second mortgage to help Brian with his down payment. And I know the medical bills from Mom's surgery last year wiped out your savings. How did you? Dad starts, but his voice cracks. Public records. It took me about 10 minutes to find everything online. I lean forward, my hands folded on the table. So yesterday, I drove to the county courthouse. I paid off the liens, I covered the back taxes, and I bought this house. The silence is deafening. Even the grandfather clock seems to have stopped ticking. You bought our house? Mom's voice is barely audible. I bought your house. Cash sale. The deed is in my name as of 3:47 p.m. yesterday afternoon. I look at Brian, whose expensive watch suddenly seems less impressive. So when you ask me about stability, about having something permanent, about carrying forward what you and Dad built, I did. I literally saved the thing that matters most to this family. Quote, Brian stares at his plate, his face cycling through emotions I can't name. Dad's shoulders are shaking, and I realize he's crying, something I haven't seen since his own father's funeral 15 years ago. Why? Mom asks through her tears. Why would you do that for us after the way we... Because you're my family, I say simply, and this is my home. It always has been, even when I was too stubborn or too hurt to admit it. The tears come slowly at first, then all at once. Mom gets up from her chair and wraps her arms around me, and for the first time in 10 years, I let myself be her little boy again. She smells like cinnamon and love and forgiveness, and I realize how much I've missed this, the simple comfort of being held by someone who's known you since before you knew yourself. I'm so sorry, she whispers against my shoulder. We're so sorry, honey. We didn't understand. We thought we were protecting you by pushing you towards something safe. Dad stands up slowly, his face streaked with tears he's not bothering to hide. Son, he says, and his voice breaks on the word. I don't know how to... what you did. He shakes his head, overwhelmed. I called you a bum. I said you had no direction. And all this time you were. Taking care of your family. Mr. Rourke finishes, raising his water glass in a toast. Just like your old man taught you, even if he didn't realize it. Brian sits in stunned silence, staring at his hands. When he finally looks up, his eyes are red-rimmed. I'm an ass, he says quietly. A complete ass. Here I am, lecturing you about responsibility, and you... God, Ethan, you saved our parents' house. You saved their home. I saved our home, I correct him. This place belongs to all of us. It always has. Kayla wipes tears from her eyes and smiles. I knew there was more to the story. I just knew it. The way you talked about your work, the passion in your voice. That's not how someone talks about failure. The grandfather clock chimes 9 times, marking the passage of another hour, another chapter in our family's story. Outside, the snow continues to fall, blanketing the neighborhood in silence and peace. Inside, something has shifted permanently. The walls that I built around my heart over the past decade aren't crumbling. They're opening like doors. So what happens now? Mom asks, settling back into her chair but keeping one hand on my arm, as if she's afraid I might disappear again. Now we eat dessert, I say, and everyone laughs. The kind of real, genuine laughter that comes after crying, after truth-telling, after walls come down. Mom's apple pie isn't going to eat itself. And after that? Dad asks. I look around the table at the faces of my family, imperfect, stubborn, loving people who shaped me in ways I'm still discovering. After that, we figure out how to be a family again, one conversation at a time, one Christmas at a time. Mr. Rourke raises his glass again. To coming home, he says. To coming home, we echo, and for the first time in 10 years, I truly am. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.